Thank you very much. So, one of the... Sorry, it sort of slipped down a little bit. Yes. So, don't really like this, doesn't like me. Making better decisions with business data really is a challenge. So, the big questions that we have with our data when we're capturing data, when we're utilising data, really are the who, what, where, when, why, and then the how. Now, how is what I'm going to sort of focus on in this discussion. So how do you best capture your data to make business decisions, not just for the sake of capturing data, which happens a lot. People gather data, and then they go, well, what am I going to do with it? Rather than the process of thinking about that first. How do I decide which solution, which combination of technologies is or isn't best suited to my organisation at this point in time? I love technology. I play with it every day. If I could use more and more technology all the time, I would. We play a lot in that space. Scaling of what you do. Whether you look at something from that really high up level and see what you need to build, or whether you're looking at, whether you need to look at the finer detail of what's inside what you're capturing. As in this case, we're actually doing some drone work, and that is that little circle there in amongst all the people. Someone on the side of the road had decided to stop and make this life-size people and then put that in the middle of it. It's understanding the difference in scales of what you're doing. I said I love technology. A lot of cases, however, cutting edge isn't necessarily the best option to go with. It's about finding that best solution to allow you to solve the problems. No point trying to push the square. That ball rolls much, much easier. Fit for purpose. You say you want a drone? Okay, we could give you big predator, or we could give you a tiny little thing. If you don't know what you want, most people want some combination, somewhere in the middle. They want to they need that solution that will do more than one thing. But to do that, you need to understand what your process is first. It's about understanding the combination of mobile, desktop, and web or server applications and technologies to best fit your situation, your organisation, your clients. I'm going to talk a little bit about asset condition assessment. Now, it can vary a lot depending on what business you're in, what type of assets you have. Who can look at this image here and see what the problem might be? Anyone identify an issue with that image? Oh, these are water runoff areas, and they are kind of causing the problem. If you look all along this road through here, it's quite rough. We nicknamed this road Slippy Road. Slippy because every time it rains, it tries to half slip off the side of the hill. So there's big cracks that run the whole length of some of that area. Unless you have been hiding under a bit of a rock, you may have realised or noticed that there was a bit of water came down earlier this year, a bit of flooding in central and western Queensland. I know there's a few people in the room that would have seen some of the effects of this. This is Winton. Winton became an island during this. Winton is in central Queensland. Physical size of it is about 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre square. It's quite small. And that's one of the main roads coming in and out of the town. So after that type of event, you need to understand the impact on your assets. Now, in this case, it's the road assets. So they asked us, can you have a look at our assets? Can you have a look at our roads? Can you tell us what sort of condition that they're in? So what we decided to do was to put together a collector application through the data that they already had, the asset condition data that they had, and then update that information. So it's a big area out there, big area. It's, as you can see, it's a lot of space. You need to look at the condition of things like cattle grids, gates, and floodways. Now, to do this, you need to have that data in a format that you can not only update the data or capture the data, but also give meaningful condition information about it and then report on that data. Seems simple. You can identify those points. Now, this was all done as a live feed so that they can then see what's happening in near real time, because as we probably all know, there's not a whole lot of connectivity in some of these areas outside of towns. So once again, the technology then allows you to take it offline and then synchronize it back online. So it's understanding that use case for your data. Identify those urgent ones. Now, urgent. A lot of floodways. A lot of floodways. That area, very flat. A lot of water moves through there. I drove over that road. That undercutting on that floodway is nearly 2 meters underneath the road. So being able to identify that quickly at the end of the day's work and then be able to report that back so that they can then allocate that work out to a field crew to go and fix it. Because it's urgent. It's on a major road. People might drive over it with a 3-ton caravan and it might collapse. You don't want that. That's a public relations nightmare. It's about understanding that whole asset life cycle. The asset in this case is the road, but it's also the data. So you need to plan out how you're going to initially capture that data and maintain it. And the same with the roads in this situation, where we need to understand how you build it, you operate it, you maintain it, and at the end of the life cycle of that asset, you dispose of it or you rebuild it. It all comes down to planning how you do things. Winton Shire Council said, we want to build a road. Okay, cool. Roads are good. We like to go places. Where? Oh, we want to build it in Winton. Okay, makes sense. You're Winton Shire Council. However, it's not actually in Winton. It's about 250 kilometres out of Winton. All right, okay. So we need to do a pre-design. We need to understand what is there in the first place. What information can you give us and how can you provide it to us? How would you like to do it? Do you want to do it the traditional way? Would you like to send a team of surveyors out there? No, surprise me. Okay, we'll do it with a UAV. As I said, I like technology. We all play with technology. Then it sort of came down to, is that expensive? And once again, this comes down to the planning process. It's understanding your use case. Now, in this situation, we looked at it and said, well, given the distance from the centre, what you want done, and the fact that we already have a base station network set up, we can actually provide this for you much faster and in a much less expensive way by doing it with UAV. Because instead of spending 2 weeks out there with a team of surveyors, it's a 20-kilometre section of road, we can do it, all the flights, can have all of it done, processed, and provided back to you overnight. That then allows them to visualise the road, the flight path that we did, and look at the detail about where water flows across the road, how the environmental factors are going to impact on that infrastructure. So that when they build the road, they can put the floodways in the right place. They can put them where the water flow is going to go, so that they don't then have to go and rebuild this section of road because it's washed out the bitumen pavement as opposed to having a concrete floodway there. Planning. Planning on the project, but also that requires planning on how you're going to capture and utilise the data that's being captured for this project. Water table. We had a client come to us and say, we have these piezometer stations. We measure the water table level at increments every year to see how the water table rises and falls depending on how much we pump out to irrigate our area. We have about 750 of them, but we need to look at a smaller number of them so that we don't have to look at all this data all the time. We think that about 10% of them might go above our alarm levels. So basically saying that they're outside of a metre above or below the average over a 10-year period. Why do they want to do this? Because rising water table in these areas is bad because of salinity, soil salinity. Little piezometer, very simple little thing. That's how the data was. And in a lot of cases, you'll all be very familiar with this, it's an Excel spreadsheet, and that's how they capture the data. So being able to visualize that data is, for that client, was very challenging because they didn't understand what was in their data, what they needed to do with it. And so we started looking at it and delving into their data a bit more. And as they thought about 10% of their data was outside of their 1 metre alarm levels, plus or minus. Green is good. Green is sub 1 metre. I think it's about 90% of them on that year are outside of their alarm level. And without having that visualisation, without having the idea about how you capture but then manage that data and visualise it and utilise it within the process, they had no idea that for the past 40 years that a lot of their water levels were way outside what they thought they were going to be or should be. And so you start looking at some years, yep, it's great. We have got that 10% or so of sites that are outside of our alarm levels. But then we have these other years where it is way, way outside. And then you start putting them side by side and they start to go, ooh, wow. What does that mean though? You start to see these patterns in data. What it means though is that we can start now planning with this client. I just finished doing this work with this client in the last couple of weeks. So we're now working with them to start planning how they move forward. Start planning on how they utilise their data, how they then capture their data. We're now moving to create more field data capture applications for them so that rather than collecting the data in an Excel spreadsheet, they collect it through something like Survey 123 or Collector. And that is then fed in near real time back into their server applications, which then allow them to understand very, very quickly what's happening. That's really all I have to say today. What I want people to understand and to get out of this is that planning your data capture, planning how you're going to utilise your data is extremely important. It's something that we see every day that people don't do. And I said that's really the message I want to get across to everyone, is to ensure that you do that planning. That initial groundwork is extremely important for the long-term usability of your data and your infrastructure.